Good morning, everyone. Shema Tov, Akatavach. We are up to Perek Zayin Mishna Vav, continuing with a case where there are two boxes. One has truma, the other box has chulin, regular grain that can be eaten by anyone, and we don't know which box is which. In this case, it goes like this. Nafla achas mehen l'seicha chulin. One of them fell into grain that was chulin. Okay, so we have one box that's truma, one box that's chulin. We don't know which one is which. One of them fell into another box of chulin, meaning grain that was all truma, mice, everything taken from it, all ready to eat by anyone. Now, in case, so here's the setup. If the one that fell in was truma, so then we have here a mixture. We have a mixture of truma and chulin. And if the chulin is not 100 times more than what fell in, it becomes meduma and it becomes forbidden other than to a kohen. If what fell in was the chulin, then nothing's affected. So we don't know what fell into this box of chulin. Was it truma? Was it chulin? So we have here a question of a suffix, a question as to whether now we have a pile or a box or whatever you want to call it of meduma, of grain where we have a mixture of chulin and truma, because we don't know what fell in. Did the truma fall in? Did the chulin fall in? So do we say that we suffix out of doubt, we have to treat this chulin that one of the boxes fell into, we have to consider it like a mixture of truma and chulin? The Mishna says, Eina medamatan. It does not make it meduma. It does not affect the box, the chulin that fell into, which means for the purposes of this grain, this chulin, that this one of these boxes, we don't know what it is fell into, we do look at it as if the chulin fell in, because we don't say anything has changed. We don't say that it becomes meduma. That means we're assuming that it wasn't the truma fell in, but it was the chulin that fell in. And this is an assumption like we had previously, where because we're talking about truma midraban, we're talking about rabbinic truma that was an obligation to separate according to rabbinic law. Therefore, we can be lenient, subject to rabbanan l'kula. We can apply here, under these circumstances, the rule, when we have a doubt regarding rabbinic law, that we can be lenient. And therefore here, where the question, first of all, we're dealing with truma, which is rabbinic in nature. The whole separation is rabbinic in nature. Secondly, the whole law of meduma, this whole law that you need 100 times more when truma gets mixed into chulin, that's also midrash. It's also rabbinic law. According to Torah law, a majority would be able to, if it's talking about two dry things that got mixed together, a majority would be able to nullify it. The fact that we need 100 times more, that's rabbinic in itself. Therefore, being that the whole question here is regarding rabbinic law, here, under these circumstances, we can apply the rule that when we have a doubt regarding rabbinic law, we can be lenient. Again, there are different conditions and details about this law, but that is the explanation. That's the principle that we're working with here. The principle we're working with is that a rabbinic doubt, we can be lenient, and that rule can be applied here. Okay, now, so this is so we're still left though with a box, right? We started off with two boxes. One was chulin, one was truma. We don't know which one is which. One of them fell in, one of them is left. V'hashniya, so we'll read with the second one. No yigba b'truma. We consider it like truma. We treat it like truma. I mean, we don't really know which box fell in. Was it the truma box or the chulin box? So we're still left with a doubt what we're left with. And therefore, we have to treat it like truma, in the sense that if it's not a kohen, they can't eat it. We have to protect it from becoming tamei. But nonetheless, it is still going to be obligated to separate challah from it, because being that it's possible that it is the chulin one, we can't be lenient and say, well, since we treated the first one like chulin, and this one, therefore, and this one is truma, we can exempt it from challah. We can't, because everything is working with the doubt. And being that we're left with the doubt that perhaps this remaining box of grain is the chulin, and if you make a dough out of it, you'd have to separate challah from it. That would be applied here also. What's important to note is that when we said in the first case, the wording of the Mishnah is that one of them fell. One of them fell. It's not medama. It doesn't make it. Doesn't make it meduma, right? So we had the two boxes. We don't know which is true, which is chulin. One of them fell in. We say it doesn't affect the grain that it fell into. This is only if it accidentally fell in. You cannot intentionally pick up one of the boxes and throw it into the chulin and say, oh, well, hey, it got mixed with the chulin and Safek Rabbanan L'Kula, and therefore I don't got to worry about it. You can't do that. That is the equivalent of trying to nullify something intentionally, which you may not do. So the only time we're going to say that it doesn't make it meduma when this mixture happens, when the mixture happens with something that we don't know what exactly it is that fell in, that has to, when it falls in, has to fall in accidentally. It can't be intentionally put it in. All right. Divrei Rabbi Meir, these are words of Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yossi Paiter, Rabbi Yossi exempts from chala, as we had previously. Rabbi Yossi says that when we're left with a doubt, which is what we're left with, meaning this remaining box, we don't know, is it chulin, is it truma? So it's the equivalent of meduma. It may not be the actual meduma, it's not a mixture of something, but at the end of the day, it's a question, is it truma, is it chulin? That's the same thing as meduma. And meduma, we know that you don't have to separate challah from, as we mentioned previously. So the question is, in this case where we have a doubt, not because something got mixed in. We don't know, maybe nothing got mixed in, we just don't know which is which. That has already been, we've seen this argument to Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yossi as to whether you have to separate challah from it or not. Now, the story continues. Nafla shniya l'makam acher. Now the other box fell somewhere else. Okay, one box fell into one pile of chulin, and then the other box fell into a pile of chulin. Eina midamatan. Again, this doesn't make it meduma. Even though now it comes out that one of them has to have had truma fall into it, at the end of the day, these things did not happen together and at the same time, or I should say, as we said, even though now we know that truma fell into one of them, nonetheless, we look at each one separately. Each one is a suffix, is a doubt, because we really don't know which one had the truma fall in. And being that we're left with a doubt, and again, this is rabbinic law that we're dealing with, therefore, we can be lenient. Now, this has to be qualified a bit. And that is that the case has to be a case where, as we mentioned, we had this before, that after both fall in, if after both fall in, they approach the rabbi, they approach the chacham, approach the bezdin, and they put the whole story together. There was one box fell in here, another box fell in here. We don't know which fell into what. Like we had before, if the question is posed together as one, then there's going to be then we have to look at, then we have to take the whole question we have to look at the whole thing together, and then we know that one of them had truma fall in. So let me read to you how the Yad Avram brings it down. This is provided, however, that the two resultant mixtures belong to two different people, and each owner seeks a rabbinic ruling separately. And if each box belongs to a separate person, so then each person can ask his question. And when each person presents his question separately, each question is judged. Each doubt is judged as a singular doubt. If they were come together, as I said before, because they both came together to the bezdin, telling a scenario, one of us owned, owned one box, one was on the other box. We got mixed up which one is truma, which one is chulin, and each one fell into a different box, and they present the question together. Well, in that situation, it has to be judged together. And in that situation, we know that one of them has truma. So we're going to be stuck. At the end of the day, they're both going to be considered meduma, going to be considered a doubt. But if, let's say, they came separately, then they're judged separately. Another situation, let's say one person owned both boxes. So here the Yad Avram says would also apply to a one-owner case, providing that the first mixture was already consumed and no longer relevant when the question arose on the second. If we're talking about one person, the way the Yad Avram is qualifying, if we're talking about one person owned both boxes. But at the end of the day, we're talking about one person owning both boxes. And at a point, both boxes do fall in, even if they're separate things. My understanding of what he's saying is that in that situation, if we're dealing with one person, then we're not going to be able to look at things separately. Unless, as he says, let's say after the first box fell in, it was consumed. It's not here anymore. It's not relevant. If it's not relevant anymore because it's been consumed, I'm only left with one box, there's only one relevant doubt, then it's a singular doubt. But if, let's say, both are still in existence. So now it's irrelevant. The fact that now I have a question, the question now becomes a question on both of them because they belong to one person. Then it seems where the Yad Avram is saying that then you have to look at the whole picture together. You're not going to be able to say each one separately. But the point is that the Mishna's case, let's end it off in a simple case. The Mishna's case is the two boxes belong to two separate people. Each person presented his question separately. So even though the second box eventually fell also into another box of chulin, so we now, between the two of them, one of them has chulin, but being that the questions are presented separately by the two people, so the doubt being presented to the rabbi who's going to answer the question is a singular doubt. It's relevant here to this one person who's coming to ask the question. Then we can judge each one separately, look at each one as a doubt, and in both cases, the grain that it fell into will not become induma. Naflush down. The final case is naflush stem l'makom echad. Let's say both fell into one place. Okay, both boxes fell into one place. We know there is truma here. Medamais kaktana shebeshteyen. They will create a doubt, but only according to the amount of the smaller one of both of them. Meaning, if let's say in this case, where we had the two boxes, one of chulin, one of truma, we got mixed up which one is which, but one is bigger than the other, which means it's possible that the one that was the truma box was the smaller box. Now, in our case, both boxes fell into one pile. Okay, so now we have to look at that pile of chulin, and we have to say, okay, we know there's truma in here, but how much truma is in here? Maybe the amount of chulin that it fell into is 100 times more than the truma. And if it is, it's going to nullify it. But the question is now, but how do I measure the truma? Do I measure it by the larger box? Because maybe the larger box was a truma box. Or can I measure it by the smaller box? Because maybe the smaller box was the truma box. And the answer is that when it comes to this question of medum, when it comes to this question of creating this doubt because of the mixture, I can work with the smaller box. I can assume that the truma was a smaller box, and if based on that amount I have 100 times of chulin, it can be mevatel. It's going to be able to nullify it. Because when it comes now to this mixture, which I know there's truma in there, but the question is the truma from the bigger box to the smaller box, and that'll make a difference if the chulin it fell into will be able to nullify the truma that was there. Then we're going to be able to assume again, because within we're rabbinic law that we can be leaned with, we can assume that the smaller box was the truma box and calculate according to the smaller amount whether I have 100 times more to nullify it. Okay, the next mitzvah shloisase, prohibition sholecha v'lishtais b'yom kippurim, not to eat or drink on Yom Kippur. Shenemar, as the pasuk says, ki kol hanefesh lo se'uneh v'nechrasa. Any soul does not afflict itself, which the Talmud explains that's meaning afflicting oneself means not to eat. Anyone who does not afflict himself, v'nechrasa, that person will be punishable by kares, divine severance of one's life. V'oich b'yom kippurim. One who eats on Yom Kippur, afilu kekresebes hagasa, even the amount of what we call a large date, v'hupachas megabetza, which is less than the volume of an egg, ma'acholam haru'iyim la'achilas adam, food that is edible to a person, hareza chayev kares, that person is liable, if he did intentionally, to punishment of kares, v'shegig chatas, if he did it unintentionally, it will carry a sin offering. Now, the point here is that, I think we mentioned it recently, actually. When the Torah talks about eating means the volume of an olive, a kazayas. But the Torah doesn't say eating. The Torah says afflicting. And therefore, for Yom Kippur, actually, to transgress eating on Yom Kippur, you need more. According to transgress the Torah law of eating on Yom Kippur, we actually need more than the volume of an olive. You need something that's going to kind of calm your hunger. And that amount is what's called a kesebes agasa, a large date. And that translates to pachas mikabetza, somewhat smaller than the volume of an egg. An egg is a double olive. So if, let's say, for our purposes, we'll say that the volume of an olive, again, the size of olives in the times of the Mishnah were different, and the size of an olive, our practice, the size of an olive is the volume of a fluid ounce. So an egg is 2 fluid ounces. Okay, sevis is a little bit less than that. So the amount of food to be considered that you have eaten on Yom Kippur and broken the Torah law is that amount, somewhat a little bit less than 2 fluid ounces. If you do it intentionally, it carries a punishment of kares, of divine severance. If you do it unintentionally, it carries a chatas, a sin offering. All foods can come together. If you take a little bit of egg and a little bit of celery and a little bit of lettuce and a little bit of cheese, whatever it is, all different types of food, you don't need the same type of food to make this amount. All foods can combine together to make this amount of food, by which we say the Torah says it's forbidden to eat. When it comes to drinking is included in this prohibition. If we're talking about, again, drinks that are drinkable to human, it's fit for human consumption. Then it's a cheekful, which is an amount of less than a revius of a average sized person. Chayiv kares, then again, intentionally carries the punishment of a divine severance and unintentionally a sin offering. So the amount for drinking is different than the amount for eating. And the amount from drinking, we call it a cheekful, which is shir pachas meravius, which is an amount less than a revius, an average person. So typically, a revius, we translate a revius as many authorities as 3 fluid ounces. And a cheekful is considered half of that. So in order to say that a person is going to be liable for drinking on Yom Kippur and transgressing Torah prohibition, it would be about that amount of drink, a cheekful. And again, all drinks can come together, wine and juice and water and whatever it may be. All of them, all different types, as long as they come together to make that amount, that would be considered drinking on Yom Kippur. That would be forbidden. Pachas mishurim haniskarim la'el. Now, what about less than those amounts? Asr min ha'Torah. The Torah still forbids you to consume or drink even less than the amounts we mentioned before. The ein bo kares, but there is no punishment, meaning there is no punishment of kares, divine severance. There is no sin offering if you did it unintentionally, but the Torah still forbids it. It doesn't carry the punishments. It doesn't carry the liability unless it has the amounts that we said before, but it's still forbidden to do. When the rabbinical court could give lashes, they would give lashes of rebelliousness, of defiance, for defying the fact that Torah said you're not allowed to do it, and you did it anyway. Sefer, and rabbinically, it was instituted, what is additionally forbidden on Yom Kippur is rechitza, bathing, sicha, anointing oneself, meaning smearing something onto one's body, unilas hasandal, wearing shoes, leather shoes, v'tash v'shamita, marital relations. While elohim avar, and regarding all these things, if you transgress, and again, you did it intentionally, makan makas mardus, again, that person received lashes of defiance. This applies in all places at all times, both by men and by women. Wish you a wonderful day. And again, Shua Tov,